recognizes the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Trehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't think that we can have a hearing about unleashing our domestic energy supply and not mention the record profits that big oil companies are about to announce from last year. 5 massive oil corporations are slated to earn a combined profit of almost $200 billion. These same companies sat here before this committee last year, and they groveled for more drilling permits so that they could lower prices. Apparently, they couldn't use any of those profits to start drilling on the thousands of permits they already have, and they couldn't allocate another dime to restart the refineries that they shut down. But you bet they used those profits for stock buybacks to inflate their share price and make sure they got their multi-million-dollar bonuses. Mr. Chair, I agree with you and members of your party that we need to achieve energy independence. We need to stop relying on the whims of OPEC, but we can't swap foreign oil oligarchs for domestic oil barons. We can't trade Vladimir Putin for ExxonMobil if they're going to keep doing the same thing, influence the market to pad their profits while working families pay the price. Mr. Chair, the American people want lower energy costs and a planet that their kids can inherit. To achieve that goal, we must focus on sustainable alternatives, and we're close to having one, in particular, that will change energy as we know it. Recent breakthroughs, including most recently at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, have finally put fusion energy within reach. Unlocking this virtually unlimited source of clean energy will drive down costs for families struggling with gas and oil prices. It'll reduce our carbon footprint and help ensure the healthy future of our planet for generations to come. But it won't happen without building on the public and private sector investments in research and development that have gotten us to this point. So, Dr. Unruh Cohen, first, thank you for your incredible work over the last 2 Congresses. In your testimony, you mentioned that U.S. public sector investment in clean energy trails other countries, including China. The Department of Energy is considering applications from private fusion companies for $50 million in public-private partnerships in a new milestone-based funding program that would support building fusion pilot plants. But according to the Fusion Industry Association, the funding opportunity announcement was significantly oversubscribed, with applications requesting close to 3 times as much funding as was allocated. Can you just tell us why public investment in fusion energy is so critical for accelerating the impact of existing private investment in the United States?
Yes, thank you for the question. And I spent a lot of my career working for Ed Markey, both in the House and the Senate, so I'm very familiar with the great clean energy technology in Massachusetts and the companies that are spinning up from that. And fusion is one of those. Obviously, you got a great one there. And, you know, the promise of fusion is amazing, and we've spent a lot of important research, federal research dollars going into that. We have had these really exciting breakthroughs, and I know, you know, we're on the cusp of being able to understand the potential there more and hopefully move forward to commercialization. I hadn't realized it had been oversubscribed. I hope that's something that this committee and the Appropriations Committee can work on to see if there's more resources available for that.
Same. Did you want to add to that?
So Congressman, probably one of the leading fusion companies in the country and the world is in or around your district in Devon. I think that plant is going to, when it comes online in 2025, will well outperform what happened at Livermore. They don't like to talk about how much, but I have a pretty good idea. When I ran the fusion energy program for the country, we decided when we were there to engage with the private sector, where DOE had not engaged with the private sector before. We had to break a little glass on that. I think the milestone program that we started moving along, needs to be expanded. And I know that some of the proposals and Build Back Better had made that larger. Yeah. I would highly encourage that we take the momentum on technology innovation, in particular in your state and your district, but elsewhere, and I would recommend that everyone here look at expanding that.
And I look forward to bipartisan work on that. I mean, I'll leave the committee with this. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission recently released their options for licensing and regulating fusion energy systems, which highlights the important safety and security benefits of fusion energy. No high-level nuclear waste, no chance of a meltdown, no special nuclear material like plutonium or uranium. But the paper also leaves some regulatory ambiguity, suggesting that future fusion power plants may be regulated like fission, which is a very different energy process. So I look forward to making sure that we put the right regulatory environment in place so that we don't stifle that innovation as it's coming to bear. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to fix something that was said earlier by Scott Peters. He said in Texas, 40% of our power is renewable. That's just not accurate. You go to EIA.gov, Energy Information Administrative, look at that. And in Texas, it's 50% natural gas, it's 18% coal, nuclear is 8%, and that's 76%. I'm not good in math, but that leaves about 24%. 20 of it is wind and 4% is solar. So we appreciate renewables in Texas. We do. But the real point of fact is that Texas, the renewables cannot be the leading actor. Renewables can be a supporting actor, but renewables cannot be the leading actor. We found that out in Winter Storm Uri. Y'all talked about pipelines, Mr. DeVar. I think it was you and one of our members. The Keystone Pipeline would have come into my district over by Beaumont, Texas. It carries 830,000 barrels of oil a day. The Colonial Pipeline system that you talked about carries about 3.1 million barrels of product a day. The Keystone Pipeline is literally 1/4 of the output, what feeds the entire southeastern part of the United States. Why didn't the president come to Texas and beg us to drill for more oil? It's been a real mystery to us. Also in my Gulf Coast district, I have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We house about 59%, not quite 60% of the SPR in my district. I've been watching it for a long time. I served 4 years in the Texas House. I was on the Environmental Energy Subcommittee. And I will tell you, or the Environmental Reg Committee, and I will tell you that we've paid a lot of attention. Texas has 225,000 miles of pipeline. The pipeline industry has a 99.925% safety rating. We can move product safer than anybody else. We can store it in the SPR. We can have it ready for emergency, not because the president wants to bring down gas prices in a election year. I mean, he's trying to help. Maybe he's storing classified documents in his garage to keep him paying storage fees. I don't know. He's just trying to help. But I want to go to you, if I can, Mr. McNally. You made an interesting comment. You said an arsenal of energy is what we need. That's a great term. You talked about the things that we have to have. You talked about World War II attack, if I remember correctly. Americans need to know what's important and why we have to be energy dominant, energy independent. It's energy, it is absolutely energy safety, it's domestic safety, it is political safety, it's military safety, economic safety. You just can't express how important it is. For the president to draw down the SPR in an election year is totally uncalled for. I'm told you're an expert on the SPR, and you sound like you're pretty knowledgeable about it. So my question to you is, in your opinion, and you've probably gone back and looked, I think the SPR capacity, depends on who you talk to, is about 714 million barrels, maybe 730, depends on who you're reading. In your opinion, what is the proper use of the SPR, and what's the history of it, if you know that far back?
Thank you, Congressman Weber. Yes, I think we topped out at about 725 million barrels. It's now about down to about half of that level. We're at a 40-year low, so it hasn't been since 1983 that we've seen it this low. And it's really unfortunate because, in a way, in my view, is a bipartisan mistake to start to sell off the SPR for just to pay sort of for regular expenses in 2017. We did the same thing in the mid-1990s, and I worked for President Bush after 9/11 when we restocked the SPR at higher prices. So we kind of went around the circle once before. I was hoping we wouldn't have to do it again. But in addition to the mandatory non-emergency sales, which I think are very unfortunate but starting to reverse, President Biden, especially in November 2021, before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, used it purely for political reasons. I mean, there was no disruption. The IEA wouldn't go along, and he had to beg China, of all people, of all countries, to go along with us. And that's up there in the halls of infamy with the decision by President Clinton, September 2020, 2 months before the election, to invite Al Gore to announce a heating oil a release at that time, too. So with the emergency release in March of last year, at least we thought we were going to lose Russia. When it started out, we had a real emergency, we thought. But within a couple of months, we realized Russian supply wasn't going off. They should have suspended the sales at that point. So we have a mixed history with the SPR. Fortunately, some presidents have used it for purely political price control, very lamentable by my count twice. We've had no kidding emergency releases, and I would say the administration probably took the right decision initially, because we thought in March of 2022, the IEA said we're going to lose 3 million barrels a day of Russian supply in April, like 2 weeks later. Again, that wolf did not come in the village. We should have suspended those sales, but we did not. We did not. Thank you for the question.
I thank you for that, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The chair recognizes a gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I join in welcoming our new members and congratulating Chairwoman McMorris Rodgers on her historic chairmanship and thanking our witnesses for being here today. It has been a long day, but I have been here and appreciated your testimony. As we've heard throughout the day, our country leads in energy production and innovation. And we lead in these areas because of the work that is done in my district and surrounding areas in Houston, ones where we touch every single segment of the energy industry, from exploration and production, transportation, transmission, marketing, technology, both traditional and renewable. And I'm going to resist the congressional urge to spend 5 minutes talking about how great my district is, although it is. But I want to share these data points because I think it really helps underscore both the importance of the issues to me and also the depth and breadth of knowledge of my constituents that I bring to the work of this committee. And it's with that in mind that I am glad to say I've heard a lot of things I agree with today from our witnesses, from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. But I have also heard a few things I disagree with. And I can't go through all of them here, but I am disappointed to hear some of the attacks on the 117th Congress's energy policies, rather than more ideas about how we can work together to build on the historic investments that we made in the last Congress. And, we have talked about some today, especially the focus on permitting issues that affects all sectors and which I very much look forward to working on. But I do think it's important to underscore that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act that we passed last Congress are historic pieces of legislation that make energy and infrastructure investments that further strengthen American energy security and drive innovation for our energy future. At this moment, we have an energy sector that is looking stronger than ever, with the EIA expecting U.S. domestic oil production to set a new record high this year of 12.4 million barrels a day, which would surpass the previous record set in 2019. The rig count is back up. It was 771 last week. Net exports are also expected to rise, further strengthening our energy security and, importantly, that of our allies. And this is happening while we are working to meet growing global demand for energy and reducing emissions. The bottom line is that we need to do all of the things we are doing and more, and we need a holistic approach. So I really look forward to talking about what that is and how we come together to do that on this committee, this Congress. But for today, I want to focus my questions on one of the programs that we passed in the bipartisan infrastructure law, funding for the implementation and design of regional hydrogen hubs. And through this program, Congress authorized the development of multiple hydrogen hubs to advance the country's clean hydrogen sector. And the Department of Energy will select 6 to 10 regions to establish these hydrogen hubs. Mr. Crenshaw and I recently led a letter to Secretary Granholm making the case, not surprisingly, for the department to select Houston as a location for a hydrogen hub under the program. So I want to direct my question first to Dr. Unruh Cohen. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask this. I have a quick follow-up if we can get to it. If not, I'll submit it to you for the record. But can you just talk a little bit about how this program will advance hydrogen technology deployment and why federal support is essential in emerging technological sectors like hydrogen?
Yes, and I will sing Houston's praises in the process because they are a great example of where industry, academia, the local government have come together to identify we need to take our strengths and talents in the energy industry and expand that. And so I think you will be a good candidate for the hydrogen hub. The program will drive these types of partnerships between industry and the federal government to develop the new technology. And hydrogen is critical for also all of the petrochemical work that happens in the Houston area, because we're going to need clean, green hydrogen to help decarbonize some of those processes so that we can, benefit and have a clean chemicals coming out of our domestic plants.
Well, thank you for that. And with the time I have left, I may have to get your question for the record, and if anyone else wants to submit a response, I would appreciate that, because I think, while this investment is essential to jumpstarting the technology, I worry there's still a lot of hurdles that Congress needs to address before we can see widespread adoption. DOE's 2020 hydrogen program plan identified rights-of-way and permitting issues for hydrogen pipelines as challenges for hydrogen delivery infrastructure. And I think there's still a lot of unresolved questions regarding siting, political federal state jurisdictional conflicts, and the regulation of pipeline rates in terms of service that need to be resolved. So with the 12 seconds I have left, have I gone over?
It's going the wrong direction.
I'm going the wrong direction. So with that is my question. If you could respond to that for the record, I would appreciate it, and I will yield back the balance of my time that I've gone over. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
Yes. All right. Thank you. The gentlewoman from Texas yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, energy security is national security. We've heard that over and over again. And when we were in the last time we were in the majority, we passed the Congressional Review Act, and what it did was, revise a lot of the regulations, update a lot of the regulations around oil and gas industry. And what we saw, we couldn't believe. We became energy dominant, and we had the power to control the cost of a barrel of oil. That, to me, is maybe the greatest power that you can experience. In fact, we drove it, market price was $30, $40 a barrel. We created an oil war, went to $7 a barrel. And now we're, 90 to 100, it's been over 100. And Mr. McNally, he said it's going to fluctuate even more than that. But in fact, we did this throughout the economy. And Ms. Jackson, everybody benefited. It was the greatest economy I've ever seen in my lifetime. So there's no secret that President Biden and his administration have declared a war on fossil fuels. I mean, he said there will be no more drilling. I think that was a quote. And so we see what's happened now. In fact, back in the greatest economy, we had 1.26% inflation. And Mr. McNally, how can we unleash oil and gas industry and become energy dominant again? Is there a secret sauce? I mean, to make both, yes.
Well, again, if I could rephrase my attempt to answer Congressman Eschew's very good question. Get back to all of the above and get honest data and analysis. If we can just do that, we'll be in a much better place. To his credit, President Obama, to his credit, helped get rid of the crude oil export ban, which directly threatened the shale oil boom, and recognized not only was that good for our energy production, but helped us offset the loss of Iran, which we were sanctioning and so forth. He understood that transitions are multi-decade affairs, and he, to his credit, thought that gas was part of the clean energy future. But as you have pointed out, we have moved to keep it in the ground, to a war on fossil fuels, and that must end. And I think, honestly, if we could just get back to where we were in the last few presidents, including President Trump, where it's all of the above, we can unleash, our energy potential.
So Congressman, it started with great innovation by the member from Texas. The Permian Basin cost year by year was dropping because of innovation. That allowed us to drive prices down globally as a result of that innovation. Then the federal system and the state systems allowed things to get built to move that energy to where it needed to go.
So let me ask you this. Would it be fair to assume that free market drives prices down, government intervention drives prices up?
That is the irony of what we're seeing today.
Okay, so what we've done, I was on the House Energy Action Team, and I met with I was a small business owner. I met with a lot of small business owners who were in the business of drilling and refining. They're out of business. They were driven out of business. You know, if you have more demand than you have supply, guess what? The price is going to go up. Now, obviously, if you're one of the few companies remaining, you're going to benefit from that. Now, how do we reverse that? We got to open up the free markets, and then you will drive down prices. I mean, you know, there's no secret to the way our economy works. As far as, also I wanted to ask you a quick question. I got about 45 seconds about Russia being the leading leader in exporting enriched fuel. And of course, the strategy was to urge for U.S. production of our own nuclear fuel. I've got Vogtle 3 and 4 hopefully coming online. We got plenty of electricity in Georgia. In fact, you're probably going to have to bring your car to Georgia to charge it at some point in time. But can you give me a little background on that?
So Russia has almost half of the global enrichment market. The biggest exposed country to that is the United States. If Russia tomorrow decided to stop exporting their enriched uranium to us, over the course of a couple of refueling cycles, we might lose half of the fuel needed to run the nuclear power plants. That's 20% of the country. That's 10% of the power plants would be at risk of not having fuel.
Well, I would hope that this Congress will do something about that. Thank you.